Welcome to Access Asia, I'm Yuka Royer. Coming up in this show, a 90-day truce has officially begun, but where will the US-China trade war go from here? We'll get an economist's view on the implications not just for the two rivals, but for the world. Taiwan shuts down its last operating atomic power plant. It's the culmination of the island's long-held goal of becoming a nuclear-free homeland, but it's sparking fears of an energy crunch. Chinese and Japanese films are vying for the Palme d'Or, and a host of others are being screened. We'll take a deep dive into Asian cinema at the Cannes Film Festival. The United States and China have both temporarily lowered sky-high tariffs imposed on each other's goods as they seek to negotiate a trade deal over the next 3 months. The speed and the level of de-escalation surprised many and sent global markets rallying, even though import duties remain much higher than before Donald Trump began his second term as US president in January. The big question now is, what comes next? Will the world's two largest economies bury the hatchet and reach lasting trade peace? Or will they continue with their mutually destructive tariff war and drag the global economy down with it? Now, to get some more insights, let's bring in Louise Loo, China lead at Oxford Economics. She joins us from Singapore. Thank you, Louise, for joining us.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure.
Now, many saw the tit-for-tat tariff tussle since April as a massive game of chicken between Presidents Trump and Xi. Many in China, though, celebrated the truce as a win. Who blinked first, in your opinion?
I think if we look at the statements in the lead up to the truce, if we look at the actions over the last few months, I would say that it's President Trump who blinked first. It does seem that there are bigger hopes of reconciliation from the US side than the Chinese side. It also does seem that, they are in a position of weaker negotiation power. I say that because I think a lot of the analysis, including ours, are pointing to the fact that the US economy is going to be hit much harder than the Chinese economy in such high tariffs. So I think, yes, the Americans probably blinked first in this instance.
So Donald Trump, in other words, might have overestimated America's bargaining power in this, but Beijing, for its part, spent years analysing and identifying the US economy's weakness.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that it's probably useful to also note that the Chinese economy, given the experience of the 2018-2019 trade war, they came in very much prepared. They have diversified their trade links with other parts of the world economy. They have lengthened their supply chains. They have de-risked effectively from relying on the US for exports, for export demand. So I would say that the Chinese seem to be in a much better position. But of course, it is coming at a time where the economy is facing a lot of domestic challenges for the Chinese, that is. And so it's quite an inconvenient time economically, this trade war that's happening in the background.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Beijing has been grappling with its own economic weakness, and damage has already been done as some Chinese factories started laying off workers and cargo ships turned around and left the United States since this trade war started. Have the past weeks had any impact on Chinese people's confidence in the communist leadership?
I would say that actually, strangely, the escalation of trade tariffs over the last few months have probably increased a kind of sense of nationalism amongst the Chinese. They know, from some of these state media, the top Chinese leadership has positioned this as a struggle, a national struggle against, pretty volatile external influences. I think that has really, kind of galvanized people together, really strengthened that nationalistic stance towards the Chinese government. Now, having said that, I think consumer sentiment remains to be quite low in China. And part of that is also because even though there is a 90-day truce, nobody really knows, what the forward path of tariffs is. Nobody really knows if there is going to be a decisive de-escalation that, some are hoping for, or there is also the possibility that things could escalate quite quickly, as we know from the last 2 months. So nothing is decided, and trade uncertainty is still very high despite the truce.
In short, just how much uncertainty is the world facing right now?
A lot. I think it's hard to measure, to quantify that. We probably are in a better place now than we were a month ago. We know that there is clearly a pain threshold here that President Trump will not tolerate, and that is what it was a month ago. So we know that the worst case scenario is effectively diminished. The probability of that is diminished. So that gives us hope. Going forward, I think it is up to policymakers to really be able to look through the volatility in the near term and really support the domestic economy however they can in order to kind of tie through some of these tariffs that may or may not be coming.
Well, Louise Loo from Oxford Economics, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Now, Taiwan is shutting down its last operational nuclear reactor. The government says it's an important milestone in its long-held energy transition plan. However, even though nuclear power only accounts for about 4% of its energy mix, a recent AI boom is making the island, a major semiconductor manufacturer, hungrier for electricity. And many are concerned that its reliance on imported fossil fuel energy makes it vulnerable to any future Chinese blockade. Jennifer Ben-Brahim tells us more.
The end of an era for the Ma'anshan nuclear power plant, the last of its kind in Taiwan after 40 years of service. The decision to stop using nuclear power on safety grounds has garnered mixed reactions from locals.
Taiwan is such a small place, and currently there's no better and more efficient natural energy source that can replace nuclear power.
If you walk along the tree line, you can see the entire ocean. With no nuclear power plant, it will be a very beautiful coastline.
The popular tourist region around Ma'anshan is dotted with wind turbines and solar panels. Despite the government's target to hit net zero emissions by 2050, imported fossil fuels are now the dominant energy generator in Taiwan. This reliance on imported energy also leaves the self-ruled island vulnerable to Chinese aggression. Beijing claims Taiwan is part of its territory and vows to bring it under its control one day. Recent large-scale military drills around Taiwan simulated strikes on key ports and energy sites.
More than 95% of Taiwan's fossil fuel is imported. If our relationship with China deteriorates, they could target our fossil fuel supply as it's Taiwan's major source of electricity generation.
With fears of a Chinese blockade and Parliament amending a law enabling nuclear plants to extend their operating life by up to 20 years, it remains to be seen whether nuclear power has truly run out of steam in Taiwan.
The 78th Cannes Film Festival is in full swing here in France, and as always, there's a strong selection of Asian films competing for major prizes and screening in sidebar selections. To tell us more about Asian cinema and its role at Cannes, I'm joined now by Olivier Salazar-Winspear from our Culture Desk. Hi, Olivier. Good to have you. Now, first of all, can you give us an overview of the major Asian features screening at Cannes this year?
So there are two Asian films in the official competition competing for the Palme d'Or. The first is the Chinese film Resurrection by Bi Gan. That's a surreal story of a woman facing an existential choice set in 2068. Then there's Renoir from Japanese director Chie Hayakawa, which is about a young girl dealing with bereavement and family dynamics in the Tokyo of the 1980s. But it's not all about the Palme d'Or at Cannes. There are important sidebar sections like Un Certain Regard, where we have another Japanese film. That one's called A Pale View of Hills. It's actually the adaptation of Kazuo Ishiguro's novel about a widow who leaves Nagasaki after the devastation of the war. There's an Indian film, Homebound, from Niraj Gaiwan, about childhood friends in search of social mobility, status through their career choices. And there are other Asian films not competing for awards. The midnight screenings, for example, are well known for their genre movies, horror, thrillers. And then you have the parallel sections at Cannes. So the Critics' Week, the Directors' Fortnight, you have Thai, Vietnamese cinema there. And then there's the marketplace. It's the less glitzy part of the event, far from the red carpet, where you have a big Indonesian delegation this year, Korean, Indian producers trying to sell their features. And Asian artists are often present in the jury. That's the case this year with Indian writer-director Payal Kapadia, who won the Grand Prix at Cannes last year for All We Imagine as Light. and veteran Korean filmmaker Hang Song-soo, who'll be judging the films in competition, and he should know a thing about it because he's had 4 films competing there at Cannes over the years.
So a strong presence by Asian nations, but we've seen some of the big prizes at Cannes go to Asian films in recent years. Can we say that Asian cinema is a recent trend there?
Well, it's been present at the festival since its at the beginning in 1946, mainly Indian and Japanese cinema at that time. But it's true that over the last 30 years, the role of Asian cinema has really expanded at Cannes, I must say. The Palme d'Or went to Bong Joon-ho's Parasite in 2019, and then Koreeda, Japanese filmmaker, won in 2018 for Shoplifters. And in 2010, Achipong Wirasaitakul surprised many critics with his win of the top prize for Uncle Boonmi, who recalls his past lives, a Thai film set in Thailand. The festival's also been really important for launching the international careers of certain filmmakers. Wong Kar-wai's pioneering Happy Together was shown there in 1997. He went on to become one of the biggest names in Hong Kong cinema. And Park Chan-wook wasn't that well known outside of his native South Korea until 2003 when he showed Old Boy there, won the Grand Prix. Since then, he's presented 3 films at Cannes. They've all won prizes.
So when it comes to the choice of to program Asian movies, why do you think Cannes is often the choice when there are plenty of film festivals in Asia closer to home?
Yeah, that's true. There are big events like the Busan International Film Festival in Korea, film festivals in Tokyo, Shanghai, Hong Kong, but Cannes is arguably second to none when it comes to international exposure. It's really a world festival. Parasite, which I mentioned, won the top prize there in 2019. It went on to win the Academy Award in 2020, in part thanks to that exposure media coverage of Cannes. So if you think
springboard.
Yeah, totally. And if you think of the smaller film industries like Bangladesh, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, this is an opportunity for them to show their work to a bigger audience, but also to show work that might be a bit taboo at home. So a recent Bangladeshi film at Cannes dealt with sexual assault. 2022's Joyland, a Pakistani film, had a trans character in the main role, a bit controversial at home. And independent Chinese filmmaker Jie Zhangke often talks about political corruption, censorship, social change in China, the sort of films that might be a more difficult sell at Chinese film festivals, but are very warmly received in Cannes. So for many Asian filmmakers, it's worth coming to Europe, where the critical reception is perhaps a bit more open-minded, and they get a chance at distribution outside of their home region.
Well, Olivia, thank you so much. And that's all for this edition of Access Asia. But remember, you can catch up with this and all our previous episodes on our website and YouTube channel, or on your favorite podcast platform. See you next time.